Midday Treat with NAZ Elite, a monthly podcast in which I chat with HOKA NAZ Elite team members, and you'll get a behind-the-scenes scoop on their training, racing, and everyday lives. I'm your host, Eric Senseman. You can find our monthly podcast on SoundCloud by searching HOKA NAZ Elite, and you can learn more about the faces behind the team by visiting their website, nazelite.com, their Facebook page, Northern Arizona Elite, or their Instagram and Twitter, both at NAZ_Elite. All right, welcome to this episode of HOKA One Midday Treat with NAZ Elite. I'm your host, Eric, and I'm here with Scott Smith. First time on the podcast, right?
First time.
Yep.
On this particular one. I did one with Veronica.
Oh, you did one of the older versions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Scott's been around for,
I've been here
for
a while. Yeah. As evidenced by my throwback t-shirt
That's
today,
right.
which I'm pushing hard to bring back.
How many years has it been with NAZ Elite?
I guess I joined in the early months of 2014.
Yeah, okay.
So over 4 years.
Yeah, 4.5 years.
Yeah.
Still going strong.
Yeah.
Well, we, of course, are here to talk about the New York City Marathon, which you will be running.
I will be.
Now, you're going to have to forgive me, but is this your first New York?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So first New York.
The first time I'll ever have visited New York.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Whole new experience.
You'll see all five boroughs in one morning.
The best way to tour it, yeah.
You picked a good time to go. That's right. So you mentioned your teammate and nemesis, Scott Fauble, is also running. Does that excite you?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, from a training standpoint, it's awesome to have another person out there. And Scott and I can set aside our kind of healthy rivalry for the good of each other, I think, in training, which I think will be beneficial for both of us. I know when we both trained for Frankfurt along with Matt, it was good for everybody. And I mean, I've trained for cycles on my own as well, and it's definitely a lot better of an experience to have somebody else out there. So
right.
Looking forward to it, and then the kind of the fodder that we'll create for each other.
Yeah,
will be
definitely.
Fun.
Well, yeah. So I've already spoken with Fauble about his debut at New York. We did discuss your head-to-head record, and on his count, he was 5-2 against you.
Yeah, but he's also not counting a time I beat him when he was in college.
Ooh,
and he's counting times when I was in marathon training that he beat me.
Yeah, well,
so I feel like it's more like it should be 3 and 5.
Well, but my big thing to him was the last time you guys lined up for a marathon, you beat him.
Yeah, he's never beat me at anything over half marathon.
Okay, yeah.
So half marathon, 2 was a half marathon and marathon.
There you go.
So,
all right.
Yeah.
So we'll see how it goes this time.
Yeah.
Well, look, again, largely going to be talking about New York. I want to start with, I ran into you one day, several months ago at a pizza shop.
Oh, yeah.
You love pizza, for anyone that doesn't know that.
That's true, yeah.
But I remember asking you, it wasn't too long after Frankfurt, and I was like, hey man, you ran a great marathon. And your response stuck with me because I thought it was great. You said something along the lines of like, yeah, I've run a lot of marathons pretty slow, and then a couple good ones.
I remember saying that.
You don't?
No.
And I was like, this is the people's champion, man. That's just...
I ran another slow in the spring.
Oh, yeah, but you were what, 6th at Boston? So, I mean, throw times out the window, I think, there. But I enjoyed that response.
Okay.
So I imagine with New York, well, tell me, is it, why do you want to run New York? I mean, there are some obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But
I think at this stage of my career, I'm getting to where I'm not looking at the light at the end of the tunnel of my career, so to speak, but I'm also kind of weighing what experiences I want to have in the sport when I make these decisions. So it's, that goes into it too, I mean, not that having visited New York is a huge deciding factor, but getting that whole experience, going to New York, being a participant in the marathon, it's just, in general, when I've gone to marathons, it seems like it's a really great event for the city and everybody comes out and supports it. And for New York to be another major marathon that I have an opportunity to participate in was a huge deciding factor as well. So kind of another opportunity to go on a bigger stage and I didn't necessarily feel comfortable enough, or maybe even hadn't been good enough to compete in earlier in my career. At this point in my career, I feel like I'm capable of competing at that level. So I want to kind of throw myself in there and see what I can do.
Yep. And so when you lined up for the Boston Marathon, like you mentioned, in April, and before that it was Frankfurt, and you PR'd at Frankfurt.
Correct.
And it was 2:12. How many seconds?
Fast and foul.
2:12.
21, I think.
21. That's good. How much? I think confidence is part of lining up for a major like New York City. I think that's what you're kind of alluding to there. How much confidence do you bring in to New York from Frankfurt and even Boston? Again, it wasn't a killer time, but given the conditions and you ended up 6th. How did those experiences work in your favor going into New York?
I think running the 2:12 was a big confidence boost for me because I've had these segments where I get in really good shape and for whatever reason, tactically or conditions, the race doesn't pan out to be as fast as I would have hoped.
Sure.
So I've had good performances in the past, kind of like Boston was a good performance, but there's not that time that I kind of gain confidence from. So it's nice to have that solid PR in my back pocket as like a confidence boost going to New York, coupled with all these other kind of race experiences that I've had that may not have been in ideal conditions, but I competed well, which I think will serve me well in New York. And then having a faster PR will kind of give me the confidence if I'm in a group of people to be like, okay, these guys aren't 10 minutes faster than me. They're like 3 or 4 minutes faster than me. So, or I'm just as good as some of these guys. So that kind of contributes to the confidence as well.
Yeah, and that's kind of the racing side of things. What from a training perspective, how did those blocks go for Frankfurt in Boston, and what did you learn from them? What will you sort of roll into your new training cycle?
They probably couldn't have been much different, actually. I had a pretty poor training segment for Frankfurt, which I think I just was able to pull off a good race having Scott and Matt was a huge benefit out there and helping me stay confident and calm, but also the years of training that I've had leading up to like races that I mentioned that may not have gone as well, not because of the training. So having that good training going to Frankfurt, aside from that specific block, I think contributed to success there. And then a lot of that was a lot more time-specific training because it's like we're going after a time in Frankfurt. So it was like, all right, here's the times you want to hit and work out. So whereas Boston, we did a lot more kind of course-specific work, and we go out to Sunset Crater where we don't really know what the splits mean out there. Is just get in the correct effort.
Sure.
And then I felt really strong in the training throughout Boston, so I was confident on the day, no matter what the conditions were, that I was going to compete well. Yep. So I had a much better training segment for Boston than Frankfurt, I would say.
Okay. And I want to get more into training here in a little bit. We'll talk more specific about this particular block. Unfortunately, we have your coach nearby, so we can bring him in to add some thoughts. Yeah, you can explain. I just do it. Yeah. So you do, I think, have a broader goal in mind over the next couple of years. Do you know what that goal is?
It would be to make the Olympic team. Yeah, that's the big overriding one. Yeah,
no secret, I guess, for anyone in your position right now. So how does Frankfurt, Boston, New York, how does all that fit into the bigger picture, I guess, leading up to the trials?
I think kind of as I mentioned earlier that the Frankfurt race kind of puts me in a position where at least my time is in the conversation of being a potential dark horse, one of the guys who has a chance to make the team.
Sure.
So I think that time kind of, again, gives me confidence that I can step on the line and nobody's that much faster than me, whereas a race like Boston or New York, where it's not so much a time-specific goal, it's just a championship-style race, going out there and competing and placing as high as you can, I think contributes a lot more value race-wise to what the trials will be rather than a time.
Sure.
So that's kind of what I'm looking to get out of these types of races, just big-time race experience and making the right decisions and being confident in myself in the late stages of the race.
And aside from New York this fall, so that'll be fall of 18, and then the trials will be
spring of 2020.
And so in that interim, interim, how many more like marathons do you think you'll run? Will there be many more?
Probably not. Maybe. Okay. I would say at most 2.
Yeah, most 2.
Yeah. After New York.
Right.
Maybe 1.
Okay.
It kind of just depending on what I get out of New York, I think, and then what sitting down with Ben and what we feel we need to get out of the next 14, 16 months, whatever it is, to the trials. Probably not more, definitely not more than 2, and it could be as low as 1.
Sure. And between now and New York, I know Fable's got a couple races lined up. In fact, one
this weekend.
That's right. Yep. It will be the past by the time people listen to this. So
time travel.
Scott was 6th in that race, and let's see if we can predict it accurately.
6 would be pretty good. I think.
It would be. How about for you? What does the schedule look like? Scott
probably mentioned the other race that we're going to go to. I'm not doing the one in the past. I don't know how to finish that race. But I'll be doing the Great North Run with Scott. It's half marathon in England. So, going out there and hopefully trying for a PR on the half.
Okay. And that's September 9th or something?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's the only thing on the schedule?
Yeah.
Okay. And what's your current PR on the half?
62:34.
62:34, and we'll have to forgive my ignorance. I don't know too much about the course. I guess it's a fast one.
It was a fast course. Yeah, I got a really good day.
Okay.
Yeah, it was in San Diego, so.
In San Diego. Yeah, and the same's true of the Great North, like.
Yeah, I mean, I actually don't know too much about the course, but I think it's pretty fair, and people run fast there every year. So.
Okay. So that's a good reason for it. Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit more about how that training will look between now in New York, and I think this is the cue for Coach Ben to come on in, and we can hear from him a little bit. Welcome to the studio, Ben.
Well, thank you. This is a challenge.
You made it, though.
I made it.
So we did the same thing with Fable. It's like deja vu.
Oh man,
you guys are like the same person.
Yeah.
So Ben, you've got both your Scots lining up for New York. Your Scots.
The Scots.
Scots. First question for you. Will their training differ at all? I mean, you have 2 guys training for the same race, but they have different strengths, weaknesses, because they aren't the same person, as it turns out. Will they mirror each other almost exactly?
Almost exactly.
Okay.
Almost exactly. Yeah, they've both become very, very good racers and respond to a lot of the same type of things. The only big difference in the 2 segments is that they're coming off different things. So the context of the beginning of their segment is a little bit different because Scott Fauble finished up on Memorial Day at Boulder, had a couple of weeks off, had a couple of very easy weeks, and then got going. So by now, he's been going now for a little bit, and he's built up a decent bit of fitness, where Scott didn't finish his summer season until Wharf to Wharf in July.
Right.
But it's not that different because his segment wasn't as intense as the segment Scott was coming off with Fauble, so we didn't need as long of a break, and he wasn't as exhausted emotionally or physically at the end of that segment. So we're going to be smart about coming back into it, and he'll catch up with Fauble in a couple of weeks, but I don't think it'll take too long, and then they'll be on the same page.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Scott, what are you? You mentioned training with someone for a race, and you did that with Frankfurt. What do you think is most advantageous about it from your perspective? Is it just someone there to push you a little more? Is it someone there to suffer with? I mean,
I don't know. It's not even that you push that much harder, because a lot of times when I work out by myself or with somebody else, the times aren't that much faster. It's just nice to have that camaraderie with someone out, kind of as you mentioned, that we're going through the same exact thing at the same time, and if a person is having a rough day, that person's your team, and they can kind of give you a little pep talk on recovery or drag you through a hard mile that you may be kind of struggling on. So it's just nice getting out the door. And to say that I was totally solo for Boston is a little inaccurate. Kellen was training as well, and even that is nice to have another person. Even though we're running different paces for most of it, it's nice to have another body out there. It's you can complain about the workout on the cool down too.
Right, that's true. Ben, we've talked a couple times about the culture at NAZ Elite and the importance of the team and teamwork. Do you as sort of the coach and the overseer of that, try to get these guys lining up at the same races?
Yeah, I mean that's the hope, is to line up as much as you can.
Sure.
But there's individual decisions, as Scott talked about at the top, based on where they're at in their career and what makes sense for them, working backwards from the trials for their needs individually. Business decisions, come into play a little bit. So we're not always going to be exactly on the same page, but when it works out, I do prefer it.
Yep.
I've always felt, Scott could probably agree, like, when we've had a nice group getting ready for one big thing, I feel like that's when the group is functioning at a very high level, at the highest level possible.
Sure.
The Olympic trials marathon, the Olympic trials track and field.
Yep.
You just have, there's this positive tension, if you can have positive tension.
Yeah, totally.
You're building toward this really, really big moment that individually is very important to each and every person. But I think sharing it collectively makes it actually a little easier.
Yeah.
Than if you were just out there on your own getting ready for this thing. And we'll have that, of course, with Scott and Scott for New York, as well as Stefan Alafine,
Yep.
who'll be doing New York. So that group will kind of feel like a group. But then, when New York is behind us, I don't want to get ahead of New York, but when New York is behind us and the fall is behind us, I think we're going to have a lot of people on the same page for most of the entire 12 months leading up to the Olympic Trials Marathon in 2020, which is going to be very, very cool.
Yeah, absolutely. This is going to be a question for both of you, but I'm going to have Ben answer first.
Okay.
When it comes to this, Scott, at I feel like I can use that joke. Yeah. Is it getting old?
No.
Okay. At New York City, as his coach, what do you see as, I guess, his strengths, or why do you think that Scott Smith can run well at New York City?
Well, much like I wouldn't have had Scott Fauble debut at New York, coming right out of college, or I should say, have it be his first marathon, his debut, because I think you need to get one under your belt, and I think we talked about that in that podcast. With Scott Smith, I think maybe 3 years ago it wouldn't have been the right time either, because New York is such a race. It's such a there's so many tactics involved, and you have to make so many decisions constantly throughout the race, as early as a mile in, and certainly as it goes on more and more and more. And that's something that he's really worked at over the last 3 or 4 years and gotten really, really good at, is racing. Yeah. Just stepping on the line, being very confident, being able to handle a number of different situations, because it's all experience-based. Right. Like he said, he's had marathons that have been very difficult to handle weather-wise, both extremes, hot, cold. Yep. And we've thrown him in a lot of races that have been opportunities to get outside of his comfort zone a little bit. Right. And he's handled those. And even some of the failures, I think, have added to his credentials, or his personal resume, if you will, inside his own head, and so then if you look back at the last year or so, pretty much every time out of the gate he's raced really well. Yep. So now you're in a position where New York makes total sense, because that's what it is. You step on the line, you don't know exactly what's going to happen, but you're confident in yourself and your ability to make decisions. Right. And so it's just the perfect time in his career, and he's super strong after so many years of running and having so many marathons under his belt, and you got to be super strong for New York.
Sure. What do you think, Scott?
So that was a really good answer. What was the specific question again?
What makes you think that you can run well at New York City in particular? I mean, that course has, we didn't talk too much about it just now, or Ben didn't, but that course has pretty specific demands in the tactics of it. So
I think that part of it kind of excites me, and that's why I'm looking forward to it. I think that, as Ben mentioned, I'm responding better to kind of just flat out race type situations better than I have in the past. So I know when I get on the line that I'll be able to get the most out of myself on the day. And I think at a race like New York, that will be beneficial. I don't know that after the race I'll 100% be able to look back confident that I made the right decisions, but I'll know I'll get to the finish line on empty. And I think at a race like New York, that will place hopefully very high.
Sure. Yeah. So in this training block leading up to the race, what are some signals or indicators for you where you can finish a particular workout or run and be like, okay, I'm ready? Like, are there some, I don't know, sort of staple workouts that you'll kind of look to know where you're at?
It's tough because, I mean, I don't put a ton of stock into the training. I mean, I do, and I try to complete it to the best of my ability, but if something doesn't go well, I don't beat myself up over it, and vice versa. If, you know, I just absolutely crush something, I don't think that means I'm going to go win New York.
Sure,
by any means. So, I just try to keep a pretty even keel throughout training, and I think for me, it's more of the cumulative effect of the training where I gather the confidence from, rather than being like, oh man, I nailed that workout, so this is going to go well. It's kind of, I look at it, the training for a marathon as more of a body of work than like a specific workout. So that's, I mean, I guess if I had to choose one, it would be the long steady state tempos that we do. It would be kind of the biggest indicator, since it's the closest thing we'll actually do to a marathon at that effort. So if I had to choose one, that would be it. But like I said, it's more of the kind of whole of the workouts that I gather confidence from.
Sure. And Ben, we talked with Fabel about some of the differences in training with this block versus Frankfurt. But I think Scott Smith has that experience with Boston, which is more similar to New York than Frankfurt, being a major, not being totally flat. So how will his Boston build up? How similar will that be to this one here for New York?
Well, we won't have as much emphasis on downhills as we did for the Boston build-up, but as I've told Scott, I hope, and I think he has, gotten a lot of confidence from what Kellen Taylor did at Grandma's, because, you know, it's just, you'd hate to be that person, and I'm not going to sit here and predict what would have happened. I'm not going to do that, but they were in such good shape for Boston. Such unbelievable shape. It was the best training that we had ever had anyone do for a marathon. Scott on the men's side, Kellen on the women's side. And it's so great that he got 6th place at the Boston Marathon, but it did leave a little bit of a sour taste because we didn't get to see what that training would have produced in a more tangible way. But we did get to see what it produced for Kellen. And she ran the 2:24 at Grandma's, and it was such a huge performance. And so I think that, much like Scott talked about just a second ago, any segment, whether you're in any age and any ability, it doesn't matter. It's not all about what you just did the last few weeks leading in. It's a cumulative effect over time, and so his Boston training is going to help him in New York, for sure. And I think he'll build off of that segment training wise, and we can feel very confident in some of the workouts we're going to do for New York that are going to be specific to New York, with a lot of pace change and back and forth, because actually we had a lot of that in the Boston segment, as he talked about, just from the terrain alone that we were running on. You know, so I think he'll be very well suited, or very well prepared to handle the new challenges that the New York specific workouts are going to throw at him. So yeah, I'm very, very confident that it's going to be a good build up.
I definitely want to talk about expectations, sort of where you see things, how you see things from your current vantage point, how things might go. But before we do, I'll start with you, Ben. What we've already mentioned the Scott rivalry.
Oh yeah,
Scott v. Scott.
Rivalry,
yeah. What do you think about the Scott rivalry?
Well, here's the thing. I hope people know it's a joke.
Well, right. That should be.
No, my mom didn't.
We had to explain it at Boston to his mother.
You're kidding.
We were at the after party. Mom was like, "Can you stop using the word hate on Twitter?"
The H word.
The H word, that darn
I'm still going to try and roast Scott, but Mom will stop using the word hate.
Yeah, she was very confused.
She's like, should I hate
Scott? Some people don't understand that. She was at one point calling him Bad Scott.
Bad Scott!
But it's a joke, it's a thing, it's a shtick that they have on Twitter. No, I think it's hilarious.
Yeah.
And actually, people get big into it. We had the guy come up to at Boston. We were doing this little panel discussion with Chris Heisler for Runner's World, and there's all these fans there and such, and the one guy comes up and he goes, "Oh, can I get a picture with the Scotts?" Because I'm not going to say which one's my favorite Scott. I mean, he was into the whole thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think it's great. To answer your question, I think it's great. I think it's hilarious, and I think we're going to do some cool stuff during the New York segment. We're going to really
play into that.
Yeah, we're going to really play. We're going to really dive deep into that and have some fun with it, and give people some training nuggets too. But it'll be fun. Yeah, they're a blast to work with, and I'm glad that they can laugh at themselves. And I'm glad that that they're capable of self-deprecating humor.
It's the best kind of humor. Yeah. Well, my question to you, Scott, was going to be what can we expect on that front, on the Scott v. Scott front? Leading up to New York.
I don't think I have like any specific.
You haven't planned it out?
We're building a campaign.
You got a workshop.
Yeah, no, I know. Mine's generally pretty reactionary to what Scott does, and then I'll fire back at him. So but I do have one picture that I'm waiting to send off that I think that people might like.
Well, there was a recent one where you were at Hypo 2 doing a weight session. And Fable was looking in the mirror.
Yeah, I actually wasn't even there. I was
you weren't even there? You just had someone
Jen
take it for you.
posted the pictures
great.
on our, what's it?
Shared folder.
Shared folders.
Okay,
I'm not really good at the technology,
Eric,
but so I saw none of the pictures in Jen's like folder. Scott was lifting anything.
I also love when you get him in a situation where he's doing a yoga pose and you claim he's begging for mercy or whatever. Those are great. Those crack me up.
Yeah, he didn't know I did that.
Yeah. Yeah, please keep those coming.
I think we're gonna work with Citius Mag.
Yep.
And do an ongoing blog post series as they prepare for New York, but it won't be your typical. I'll just say that it won't be your typical running blog post. I think it'll be a lot of fun, and we'll get an insight into these two a little bit. It'll be cool.
Well, Citius is America's best running publication, so that's
let's
the place to
not
go.
alienate anyone on the Midday Treat podcast, Eric. We love a lot of different publications.
That's true. It's true. I'm just playing to that particular publication. It'll be. That's the right outlet.
They do a very good
job. It's the right outlet for what you're doing.
Yeah.
That'll be fun. That'll be fun to read on. So, on a more serious note, New York City, if things go well in training, what are your expectations or hopes?
I think as long as I beat Scott, pretty good day.
Okay, see, that's the right answer.
I could have a good day and lose to Scott for sure. I think a top 10 is a realistic possibility, and I think that would be a great resume booster for me, but I'm not going to rule out something higher. I'm going to get out there and compete, and if there's a spot that's higher in the top 10, then hovering around 10th, I'm going to go out and grab it. So I think top 5 would be like a huge day for me, but it's still a ways off, but I would like to finish in the top 10 would be my early assessment.
Sure. Before going to you, Ben, if you can transport yourself back to like pre-Boston and forget the fact that you finished 6th, and just put yourself in that situation. What do you think you would have said about Boston?
I think I would have given a similar answer, probably.
Okay.
The top 10 would have been a great day for me.
Sure.
Just these world marathon majors are so competitive.
Right.
I think that at these type of world majors where there's not necessarily pace groups or pacers, that it lends a little bit of an advantage to somebody like me who may not have the credentials to go after like a 204 or 206 or whatever they may pace those faster races for, where 6th place may be 206, 207. 6th place in Boston was 221.
Right.
So
right.
I know I can do that.
Yeah.
I can run 221. So I think, and then in a similar way that New York, I know that the time is the 6th place time, 10th place time is not something that's really going to intimidate me too much.
Sure.
So, I think those races lend themselves a little more to my advantage in terms of placing high than a kind of a pace time trial.
Sure. I'm gonna imagine you've got similar thoughts, Ben. But what do you think?
Well, I'm happy to hear his answer.
Yeah.
I think it was very similar to the approach that I remember Stephen Kellen taking into last year's New York, and then they both finished in the top 10.
Yep.
And actually, much like Scott's saying, even though they you have to answer these questions. People are going to ask them. You're going to ask them. Everybody's going to ask them as race week. And I never want the athletes to dodge the question, but I also think that it's healthy to have a little bit of an open mind, particularly a race where so many different things can happen, and there's only so many variables, in your control. One of which is not really your place,
right? Right.
Even though people have to ask the question. So I'm glad that he's thinking top 10, but keeping an open mind about what could be, because that's almost exactly what happened to Kellen. She was in the top 10 and then moved all the way up into 4th,
right?
And was 5th for a very long time, and then only at the very end did she scoot back to 8th in the literally the last half mile.
Yeah.
So she was that close to 4th and 5th, and so the fact that they're taking that attitude that, hey, I know for sure that I'd like to do this in general, but let's get training and see how fit we can get, and on the day, let's see how good we can be. And that's all 4 of the athletes running New York are very very mature and very capable of taking that attitude in a very healthy way into the race. Yeah.
Is a final question to wrap things up. When you look at, we've been my question was based on place, right? Like, where do you see yourself placing largely? But, do you look at a race like New York and say, I'll know if I had a good race, not based on time, not based on place, but more based on whether or not I think I sort of reach my potential on the day? I mean, is that more kind of the attitude?
I don't know that I would say it's the majority of the attitude, but if I get 11th and my goal is top 10, but I know I did everything I could to get 11th, I'm not going to beat myself up over it. So I think that is, and to a certain extent, just finishing the marathon in general at any level, you have some self-satisfaction. But I've certainly finished marathons before and been like, I didn't optimize my performance on the day, and that's a pretty disheartening feeling because you can't just go do it again next week. Sure. So I mean, I'm, like I said earlier in the podcast, I think I'm pretty confident that I'll reach the finish line knowing I got the best out of myself. If in retrospect the right decisions were made or whatever, that is something I can analyze and learn from later. But if I get to the finish line, I know that I competed the best of my abilities. There'll be some satisfaction in that. I won't, if my goal is top 10, I got 11th, that's pretty clear that I didn't reach that goal. Right. So I'm pretty cut and dry on that kind of stuff.
That's fair. Yeah.
But I would take some satisfaction knowing that I got the most out of myself on the day.
And Ben, from your perspective as a coach, how much of it is, trying to, how much of it is performance versus, get the most out of yourself, I guess. Or
you can't get away from the performance. I mean, you want to be accomplishing big things, top 10s, top 5s at World Marathon Majors, wins at national championships, all these things. But luckily, we're getting to the point with several of the athletes in the group where if Scott does what he says, he's gonna finish really high, And if I do my job and we put them in a position where they're on the, they're on the line on the day, ready to go, and they run to the best of their abilities, then really good things are going to happen. Fast times, high places, all those things. And so, in a way, it's almost like going back to high school cross country. It's like when you start out and you're in the 40s and 50s. It's really hard to be in the 40s and 50s. You don't know where you are. 10 people pass you. You have no idea what place you're in. Yeah. And it actually gets easier as you get closer to the front in a way because you're a little bit more in control. You can see things right there in front of you, see everything happening, and they're getting to the point where they can run up front in some of these really big races. And I think when we get to that place, we can start talking less about really structured things and exact splits and these kind of things, and let it flow a little bit, you know, and let them make decisions. And that's where you want to get to, particularly before the trials. Right. So we're getting close to that place, I think, with a lot of them, and I'm very excited. So
sure. Well, it's going to be exciting to watch. Yeah, we'll hear all of the top athletes that'll be in the field here in the next. Well, pretty soon.
Well, when you watch this...
when you watch them.
No, honestly, I meant to say this in the other pod, and I know Scott agrees. Like, the New York Roadrunners, they're the best. They do such a great job. That's one reason Scott wants to do it, because he's not been able to do a race in New York, and we've had such success there and such a great time there. Yeah. We really enjoyed it, and they've been nothing but welcoming to our group, and we're excited to bring the athletes that we're bringing this year in the marathon, but then we're also going to bring some of the young athletes to run the 5K the day before, which will be a wonderful experience for them. Yeah, definitely. They'll get to watch Scott and Steph and Alfie the next day, and my wife's going to come this year, and my daughter, and I think it could be a very special day for us.
Yeah, that'll be a fun weekend. Yeah. Awesome. Well, you heard it here. Scott Smith will be in New York City Marathon this year, so we'll be looking forward to that. Scott, Ben, thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, it's fun.
That's a wrap.
Beautiful, Senseman. You're just such a stud on the mic.
Well, thank you, sir.